Well, now that I've been spending some time, a little bit here and there, maybe once or twice a week, I'll take the four-wheeler out and grab a load of the firewood that I had pulled down over the last 3 years and has been drying. Some of the older stuff has actually begun to rot, so there was some loss, especially on the bottom of the piles. And I'm using that to expand the fence lines along the property boundaries that I mentioned in other videos. But some of it is not rotten, and it's dry internally, but I want it to be dry externally too, so when it rains and it's been wicking up moisture from the ground, I want all that to be gone by the time I bring it into the house this winter so that it burns really well and efficiently. So I've been bringing a load back every once in a while and bucking it out on the sawhorse, and then stacking the small stuff into the woodshed, and the bigger stuff that I'm going to need to split I'm leaving out for now. The one thing I love about a woodshed is that it prevents your firewood from getting covered in snow in the winter. One of the problems with that though is that it doesn't allow wood to dry as efficiently because there's not enough air circulation. What some people do to get around that is actually have open-faced woodsheds, at least here in Maine. I really like that idea because it helps dry the wood, but then you have the alternative problem that you get snow on your firewood in the winter. So what I've done is try to design this woodshed with the best of both worlds. It's completely enclosed. The south-facing wall, which is on that side, you can't see, it goes back away from us, is completely glass. It's all old windows that were here on this property when we moved here. There was just a big pile of old windows that the previous owner, I guess, had moved from somewhere and had intended to do something with someday. In addition to these doors, I actually have a false wall on the back that I can open up to allow air to move in and out of the woodshed, hopefully to keep things drying a little bit more from the piles outside. Let me show you how it works. Alright, so these barn doors obviously close, and that keeps the entire structure closed in the winter. As I mentioned, the south-facing wall is all glazing. I did put up this chicken wire to try to help protect the windows from the firewood, especially as I'm stacking it in there. You never know, things could slip a little bit out of the pile, and I don't want to have to replace these windows. And this beam here is actually on the outside of it. Underneath the shingles there's a hinge, or two hinges anyway, and this whole wall, here's the base of it, this whole wall hinges out like so. And all I'm going to do now is, now that I'm getting some moist firewood in here that's essentially dry on the inside, but I want the outside to dry as well, I'm going to prop this open and allow this airflow to move a little bit more freely in and out of the woodshed.
You might wonder, why didn't he just put another set of doors on the back? That's a good question. There are 3 reasons. First, I don't need to get in and out of the back of the woodshed. Similar to the bowl, an unusable section of our property I've mentioned previously, the area behind our woodshed is sort of on no person's land. It's not as bad as the bowl, but it's heavily wooded, and since it's close to our property boundary, I'd like to keep it that way. And there's a lot of debris back there from the stumpage that the previous owner had cut. Secondly, these barn door rollers are very expensive. I knew I wanted this type of door system on my woodshed, but when Emily and I went to a hardware store to purchase the track and hangers, I nearly changed my mind. There was certainly no way I was spending that on doors I don't really need. Thirdly, I got the idea for the hinged wall in my head as I was building the woodshed, and I thought it was cool. I wanted to see if I could do it. Sometimes that's all the reason I need.
When I'm working on firewood, I'm trying to keep aware and be conscious of the fact that there are different types of wood. I'm not talking about varieties of tree, although that is important. I guess instead of saying types of wood, I'm thinking of purposes of burning. So there's firewood that I use in the house. And that has to be a certain size and a certain quality of wood. Hard, some mostly hard, some soft to get things started. But I also have a wood stove in the workshop, and that is a very tiny space, and it is a very tiny stove that I bought from a friend, and so it uses really small wood. And typically what I do is burn slab wood in there, which is the stuff that comes off of a sawmill that you're not going to use. So not the lumber, but it's the sections of tree that are cut away. So the bark and then a skim layer of the wood underneath it until you get down to a dimension that you can use. So that's called slab wood. So what I do is I save the slab wood anytime I have any lumber sawed, and I split it up into firewood. And some of it I use in the house for kindling. Inevitably you're going to get pieces that are too long or too short. So what I've done is separated any of those like this. These are slightly too long. I might actually get 2 full interior inside the house pieces of firewood out of this. But these ones right here, a piece of firewood is essentially from between this section of the sawhorse to this section. So I'm going to be cutting right here on a regular piece. So all these little tiny sections right here are going to fall off. And they really make stacking a pain because they're misshapen in terms of size. But I'm fortunate to have the wood stove that takes smaller pieces in my workshop. So what I do is just kind of make a separate pile, and every once in a while I get a handful, and then I take it over to the wood shop and stack it up outside there. So I went and got a load of firewood this morning, and these are all the pieces that were too small when I had cut all my firewood lengths to be useful and easy to stack. So not only do I take pieces that are too short, but anything that comes off the tree when I'm felling it, things like this, the kerf cut, I save that, and that is small enough to fit into the wood stove in the workshop. So this type of thing, obviously I could just stack this. This is tiny, doesn't need to be split. Something like this is even too big to fit inside the wood stove inside the workshop. So I'm gonna have to split these ones here. This stuff I can stack. I don't have to stack too much out here. I don't spend a lot of time in the workshop, certainly not as much as I'd like, but I don't need to have a fire that lasts through the night or anything. It's just enough to take the edge off when I'm out here. The building's not insulated, so if I'm out here working on a project after, in January, February, it's pretty cold. So just a little bit to take the edge off. Something like this, it's thin. I'm not going to split it because it'd actually be more of a pain, so I'm just going to stack this on the pile. And the rest of this I'm going to split. I think the name of the game for success in homesteading is a little bit at a time. I have a few minutes here. I'm stretching my legs. I mentioned previously in other videos that I work from home, but I still have a desk job. Work on a computer a lot, on the phone a lot, doing research, writing emails, typical office desk job type stuff. So I try to get up frequently and move around. I had a desk job in an office for 3 or 4 years and gained a lot of weight in that 3-year period. Didn't feel as healthy, felt myself becoming less able to lift as much as I could or carry things as far as I was able to. So one thing I'm trying to do now is just really focus on making sure I take care of my body, get up, stretch, move around. So sometimes I'll take the dog for a walk in the woods, and other times I'll use the time to accomplish something like splitting a small handful of firewood, because it's not going to take that long, and it's good exercise. Actually too big around to fit inside this little tiny workshop wood stove. Something like this is actually too big around even to fit inside the wood. Why can't I say this? you.